Hey, here, Sam.
It's on. Let's go, baby.
Welcome to Rankings Reaction presented by Allstate. Come on into studio, folks. The heat turned up to 20 this week as we have more controversy than we ever have had before. And how silly and naive of us to think that expanding the playoff from 4 teams to 12 teams would actually lead to less chaos. That was just a silly thought that we all had, right?
Yes, it was, sir.
Yeah.
It's gotten worse.
Very silly. All right, alongside Matt Sims, Skubie Mageza, I am Sam Ravech. We are here to react to the most recent rankings released by the committee. So, without further ado, here is the updated 12-team playoff bracket as we stand after Week 12. Let's start at the back end this time, guys. One of the biggest questions coming into this week, would BYU drop behind Boise State, therefore opening up the possibility that the Broncos would earn a first-round bye? Turned out that is true. Remember, it is the 4 highest-ranked conference champions that get a bye. Nowhere does it say they have to come from the Power 4 conferences. If the playoff were to end today, by the way, you see Tennessee ranked 11th, but they would be out of the playoff field because, again, the 5th highest-ranked conference champion there would get in. In that case would be BYU, even though they are ranked 14th. It was also largely assumed that teams ranked 8 through 11 or so would be somewhere in the SEC. The question was going to be, how would they be ranked? Turns out that the head-to-head actually mattered quite a bit to the 13-member committee, with Alabama taking that top spot as a 2-loss team. I want to throw out a scenario to you guys, mainly to Scoob, because Scoob has been all over the Colorado train here. And Colorado fans, if you want to, feel free to put on the earmuffs here, because here is a path for Colorado as a Big 12 champion to completely miss the playoff field.
Oh, God, here we go.
You ready for it, Scoob?
Yes.
Here we go. Now follow along with me here.
As a champion, how?
The 5 highest-ranked conference champions get in as automatics, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right now, those are the Big 10, the SEC, the ACC, the Mountain West, and the Big 12. So you have the Big 12 champion as it stands. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Army. If Army were to beat Notre Dame and beat Tulane in the AAC title game, that is 2 ranked wins in a very short amount of time. Now, if that were to happen, Colorado would be a 2-loss champion out of the Big 12. The question becomes to the committee now, is Army ranked higher than Colorado as that 5th highest ranked conference champion to get in the field? That's the question I pose to you, Scoob. What do you think?
No.
Just straight up like that.
Just give me my money. Because you got to have Colorado in there from that perspective, but let's not make it as though that's the reason why they would be chosen. But I just look at Army and the opponents that they have faced. Only one FBS opponent that is above a 500 record. That is with Army, Indiana, and Memphis.
All right, now, just to annoy you, though, what if they smacked Notre Dame by like 4 touchdowns? Right?
That's where it becomes really sneaky, though. That's I love chaos, Matt.
What if America has to sit home, especially the Big 12, and watch Army-Navy December 14th to decide, are we going to get in or not? And that was one of those weird hypotheticals that we talked about with Heather all the way back in like October.
Yeah.
Remember we were discussing this in this new 12-team playoff. So it'd be really fascinating. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think Sam just wanted to kind of annoy you and frustrate you early here in the show.
But the part about
it's working.
The beautiful part about right now where we are in this rankings is the fact that that scenario is a realistic possibility.
It's worth discussing.
Very small, but worth discussing. Just the same way that LSU could have won it all. I don't see it happening, but now y'all know about the crazy scenario. So what else is a scenario?
Well,
we got to keep this thing
we just like to kind of throw some flame in there with the Colorado fans, see what happens.
Right.
All right, I want to move on to Oregon. We haven't talked about the number 1 team in the field a whole lot, primarily because they've just done what they're supposed to do.
Handling business.
Right. That was kind of up until they were really tested this past weekend against Wisconsin. Is there reason for concern based on the most recent game that you have seen from Oregon, Maddie? I'll start with you.
No, I don't think so. Of course, it's not a pretty win, but championship teams, they win ugly football games. Oregon probably played their worst game of the year. and still were able to survive that football game. Wisconsin has played a lot of tough football games. They're a very improved football team with Luke Fickell. They're getting better. They have struggled against top 25 opponents as with him as head coach. But Oregon is a good football team. They're a tough football team. Dylan Gabriel, the transfer from Oklahoma, did exactly what he did when it was Texas-Oklahoma in that Red Rivalry shootout a year ago. When the moments were the biggest and they needed a big play from him, he came up clutch with that big fourth down conversion at Ferguson. So, hey, that's why you go out and get players like him in the transfer portal, because he made those big plays for them. Even though they struggled throughout this one, I'm not concerned.
All right, well, then let me be devil's advocate over here, because Oregon has shown us multiple times that they can be beat. We saw how they were against Idaho. We saw how they played against Ohio State, where it literally took a QB slide in the final seconds for them to be able to win that game, had Will Howard not taken so long to slide and get them in field goal range. We'll be talking about them differently. And then Boise State, they needed a game-winning field goal to win that. Yeah. Wisconsin, they needed a game-winning field goal to win that. Oregon is the first team since the 2012 Notre Dame team to win 3 games by 3 points or less in a row to an 11-0 start. Now, remember how that Notre Dame team ended their season, a little bit of a blowout there in the national championship versus Alabama. But just look at their schedule. And I say play devil's advocate because we'd be talking completely different about Oregon had they lost those coin flip games. And there's several teams in the college football world that have lost multiple games by 1 score, a.k.a. Kansas. You know, we look at those teams like, y'all barely squeaked those out. So I'm playing devil's advocate there, but I will also say, Oregon, shout out to you for getting in the Big Ten your first year and winning the entire conference the way that they are.
Here's what I'll just say about Oregon. They've had to do something that actually nobody else in the country has had to do. They have played 8 straight conference games in 8 straight weeks.
Yeah.
A lot of those were on the roads, and everybody has had one of those games. Mm-hmm. The difference between Oregon and some of the other teams, say Alabama, they found a way to win that road game, and it was not pretty, but they got the job done. All right, let's go ahead and look at the remainder of the top 25 according to the committee here. A couple of the biggest risers this week, obviously Colorado moving up to 16th as they continue to win some games.
That UNLV moving up to number 9. That's interesting as well.
I would also like to give a shout out to Kenny Dillingham and fighting Arizona State Sun Devils. How about this? Arizona State picked to finish dead last in the Big 12. Yeah. And here they are with a chance to actually find their way into the Big 12 title game. SMU, Texas A&M remain a couple of first teams out. BYU, even though they are ranked 14th, again, they would be the 5th highest ranked conference champion, therefore leading to a spot in the 12-team field. Guys, I want to have a little quick conversation about the ACC here for just a second. A reminder, you're watching Rankings Reaction presented by Allstate. Also, don't forget that we have a couple of shows coming up this weekend. We'll get to that in a bit. But the ACC has been fascinating. The Big 12 gets a bad rap because of some of the lack of strength of schedule within that conference. But the same scrutiny should be applied to the ACC, don't you think, Matty?
I agree. And one of my biggest concerns really with the rankings right now is that you have BYU behind SMU, but BYU beat SMU earlier this year.
Thank you.
And then the other issue, too, is that SMU is undefeated within their own conference, which is nothing that anyone else can say within the ACC conference at the moment. So that was one of my big little snafus, I would say, with the committee at the current moment, with just saying that SMU has handled business within conference. They're 6-0. Clemson, you see, at 7-1. Miami, 5-1 with that loss against Georgia Tech. That is still, piercing into my membrane. But still, I'm a little confused by that. Yes, you can make the same argument for the Big 12 and the ACC. The lack of strength of schedule and the power, balance of the conference isn't quite there compared to the Big 10 and the SEC. But, yeah, still a lot of football to be played for this, and we'll see how it plays out.
I think there was a little bit of overreaction there with BYU, and we've seen this within the rankings of when a team loses a game, we double ding him. And BYU was sent way to the back. I mean, look at who they've beat. To your point, SMU 18-15. Kansas State, a team that the committee still considered to be a good team. I know they're not top 25, but they smacked them 38-9. And then Baylor, another team with a winning record that they beat. And Utah, still a team with a really good defense that they beat. And then Kansas, yes, I know you lost that game to Kansas. You shouldn't lose to Kansas. They're a team with a winning record. But right now, nobody in the country probably wants to see Kansas. They're one of the hottest teams in the entire nation. And before the season started, a lot of people had Kansas pegged as a team that could win the Big 12. Right. Sam, we talked about this on Saturday. Kansas, all their losses essentially have come in one-score games, and some of them have been less than 5 points. So to knock BYU back that far, after they have beaten the team that's ahead of them, after their loss against Kansas, a team that we clearly all know is a good football team, they lost 17-13, I think that was a little bit of overreaction.
I would tend to agree. And again, the same standards that we apply within these conferences that do have these really tough strength of schedules, say the SEC, for example, you're looking at 4, maybe 5 teams getting into the field this year. That will be a hot topic of discussion as well. As we continue this college football season, less than 3 weeks away from Selection Sunday, like we said, things going to be turning up the heat as we go along. And we also have you covered with a couple of shows coming up, including Countdown to Game Day to get your Saturday started. The crew will be in Columbus, Ohio, ahead of the massive showdown between Indiana and Ohio State. Christine Williamson and the Harrys will be there. And then we will be there to help you wrap up the day that was on Saturday between 8 to 9. Again, you are watching Rankings Reaction presented by Allstate. Guys, let's play a little game here with a couple of teams. I'm going to ask you if a team is rightly placed, wrongly placed by the committee, or properly placed. Okay. And we will start with Indiana. Look, Indiana's Cinderella run has been one of the more fun runs, I think, to watch throughout college football this year, but obviously their strength of schedule has been a highly debated talking point. Based on the resume up to this point, Matt, do you think Indiana properly ranked, underranked, overranked? What do you say?
Overall ranked, I think they are a little high, being at number 5. Now seeded, I see that a little bit more in the proper position that they deserve to be in. They've been handling business. They're doing a great job. They're executing at a high level. They're a tough football team that plays hard from start to finish. There's very few mental errors when you watch them play. Their quarterback is in the Heisman discussion, rightfully so, because he is playing phenomenal football. They run the football efficiently well, and they protect the quarterback consistently. The whole season, though, unfortunately for them, rides on this weekend. And we discussed it on our show this last weekend. It's got to be one of those situations. You got to play hard from start to finish. It has to be a good loss, if you know what I mean, for them. It's got to be, you got to hang in there. Yeah, if you get blown out, I think that this is a team that can drop very far out of the rankings and out of position. I don't really see them, being able to stay in that playoff contention if they lose by 3 touchdowns or more.
Here's my concern here, Scoob, and I want to come to you on this point, because I think we have more empirical data now with these expanded conferences, say an 18-team or a 16-team conference.
Yeah.
Ohio State plays in the same conference as Indiana.
Right.
But you might as well be comparing New Hampshire to Washington, because that's how different their schedules have been.
Yeah.
Indiana has played none of the top 7 teams in the Big Ten up to this point. After they play Purdue at the end of the season, they will have played 6 of the 7 worst teams in the conference. My concern is this. With Indiana ranked 5th, Scoob, I find it hard to believe that with a close loss to Ohio State that they would drop out of the field, which is why I have an issue of where they are currently ranked. Now, obviously, that's going to change. The question becomes by how much after this weekend?
Yeah. I think they just lose their opportunity for a home game, right?
That's it. That's the only consequence.
Yeah, that's the only consequence for me right now. And we're looking at our tag board, and people are reacting to Indiana as well. Joey was pretty funny on the show with the way that he was talking about Indiana.
He did say something.
Purdue caught a straight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And check me out on the bottom of the screen there on the left side. That's my surprise to all these tweets that are going on. But I will say, back to Indiana, Sam, that they're ranked a little bit too high at number 5, and still, regardless, they're locked for the playoffs, in my opinion. We said this last week. If they lose this game against Ohio State, just make sure you keep it under 21 before they ask you to pass the sticks. Besides that, you lose a game, you're in there, because their body of work has been large enough for them to not fall all the way out. But who knows, since BYU got the boot with the way that they're losing the game.
That's true. And this only helps Ohio State's case, too, as far as where their official ranking will be at the end, especially potentially then going to the Big Ten championship and maybe having a rematch against Oregon. Now, the other question, too, really is just, for Indiana, right, is there enough to keep them in it with a close loss? I think there is.
Okay.
All right, the big loss, that is the question. And I think for them, can they play well, right, in the biggest game of their careers, essentially, right, of the campus's, lifespan right now. This is the biggest game we've ever seen for the Indiana Hoosiers. And Ohio State, they're used to playing in this scenario. That's all they do is play in big games every single week. They're a highly criticized football team. Indiana, this is newfound territory for them, so we'll see if they can live up to the expectations.
So I asked the YouTube chat, hey, everybody in the YouTube chat, my laptop's right here. I'm peep gaming what y'all saying tonight. I said, what are y'all thoughts on Indiana? And a lot of people said, oh, Indiana hasn't played anyone yet, but I hope they do good. So sick of the SEC. That's one dude they traded there. And then some people are just saying Indiana and the other teams, they really haven't played any good teams on paper. So we will see. Texas got a little bit of drama over there as well in the chat. So let's go ahead and have a discussion about them as well.
I'm glad you bring up Texas. We talked about them last week here on Rankings Reaction, and the same scrutiny again should be applied to Texas, whose best win is against Vanderbilt, who's a much improved team this year, thanks in large part to the transfer portal. But you could easily make the argument that Texas isn't anywhere close, or at least their resume isn't anywhere close to being the number 3 team in the country, right or wrong, at number 3, Scoob?
Sam, I'm going to go ahead and say wrong. And here's my problem with where Texas is. I feel like there's been a placeholder for Texas in the top 5, essentially, the whole season. And just looking at the tag board again.
That's a good one for Dylan.
I like this one.
Well done, Dylan. I mean, keep them coming to our crew in the production room. But my problem with Texas the entire season, it just feels like they've had that placeholder no matter what their performance is to just kind of stay there. If you win, you stay there. Maybe you move up. Maybe you get dropped back. But right now, Texas is kind of in the same position as a lot of these 2-loss SEC teams. If you lose one more game, you are going to be out. I'm saying Texas will be out completely because their best win is Vanderbilt. They haven't looked great in their wins. They haven't looked great in their loss against Georgia.
They look great against Florida, right? But then the next week they followed up against Arkansas.
That was going to be my point.
The offensive line, right? Struggled to establish just like a dominant running game for them. Quinn Ewers only passing about 170 yards in that football game. No downfield explosive passes in that one. They hung on to that football game. They played tough. They got a legit defense. They can get after the passer when they need to. They held Taylor Green to, I want to say, like 16 yards in the football game after a rush, or maybe like -4 yards, actually, I want to say, off of 16 carries. So, like, they can get after the passer. The question is, though, the committee seems to be projecting Texas more so than actually looking at what their resume says it is at the moment.
And just one thing, Arkansas, they were the 124th passing defense in the country, and Quinn Ewers and company couldn't do much against them. Just 176 yards passing on 20 of 32 and a couple of touchdowns.
And we saw what Ole Miss did to them.
You can't have that if you're going to be an offense like Texas trying to win it all.
Obviously, that game against Texas A&M will have massive implications, not only for the SEC championship.
And Kentucky.
That was my point. Let's not look past their game against
Kentucky. Y'all might be in trouble with Kentucky. What we got?
It's a tough
Kentucky,
matchup for them.
that's a top 30 defense in the country in most statistical categories. Physical, they can get after the quarterback. Quinn Ewers hasn't necessarily been great in manipulating the pocket as of late, and they don't throw the ball down the field. Texas and Kentucky does not give up explosives. I would low-key be a little bit concerned if I was a Texas fan with how they're playing.
It's a real good look-ahead game.
And expect another tweet from Dylan saying the committee looking at the UK game like it's a good win.
That's
right. Because it kind of will be in a weird way.
All right. Moving along here, rightly or wrongly, when people think of Notre Dame this year, I think they still think Northern Illinois.
Yeah.
Right? But since then, they have won 8 straight games by an average of like 30 points per game. So they have been a dominant team. Is Notre Dame rightly or wrongly placed in this week's rankings, Matty?
It really doesn't matter since they can't be one of the teams that gets one of the buys, right? So it's like anywhere within the field right now, they are deserving to be there in that position. They play really good defense. They cause a lot of turnovers. They run the football efficiently. They're getting better each and every week on offense. Riley Leonard is playing really good, solid football for right now. So really just a well-balanced, complementary football team for Notre Dame. They're rightly placed anywhere from, it seems like, 7 to 12.
I say wrongly. Notre Dame, I've been tough on them all year, but I do feel like they should be at that number 5 spot over Indiana. Notre Dame's best win is against Texas A&M, a team that's ranked 15th by the College Football Playoff Committee. They have blown out everybody else after their tough loss against Northern Illinois. And they look like a team that can play defense, that can run the ball, and Riley Leonard has looked better every single week. So when you talk about a team that's proven themselves and beat down everybody and beat down better opponents than Indiana, I would say that's Notre Dame, which is why I think they should be ranked as high as they possibly can be, which is 5, because obviously they can't be in the top 4.
Yes, no, they cannot. And their schedule at the start of the year looked a lot worse than I think it actually has played out to be, which certainly has helped them. Now, their final 2 games of the season are both away from South Bend. The Army game is at Yankee Stadium, so that's worth noting, and they got to go out to L.A. to face USC, which is a team that would love to.
That'll be USC's Super Bowl. Don't sleep. And Notre Dame, another team. If you lose one more game, you're out.
Probably out. I don't know if the sound effects will help that. But all right, let's go ahead and take a look at the Allstate Playoff Predictor. And this week we have got a huge showdown in Columbus, Ohio. Yeah, not a ton of faith in the fighting Indiana University Hoosiers going into that game against Ohio State.
Fighting Hoosiers.
Yeah, the odds are not in their favor. ESPN.com/Allstate Playoff Predictor. That's where you should go. You can see and predict who will get into the college football playoffs, guys. This game is the game of the week. It's the biggest game in the history of Indiana football, but it feels like most of the pressure actually is kind of on Ohio State, weirdly, in this game.
It's always going to go in that direction,
right?
You know,
and nobody expects Indiana to win this game outside of Bloomington, but if Ohio State loses this game, how are they going to be compared throughout the rest of the field? Because they're a 2-loss team. Are we going to compare them to other 2-loss teams, say, in the SEC?
Yeah, because their 2 losses will be against top 4 teams. And they'll be in the same category as Georgia. Because their losses against Oregon, number 1. If Indiana beats them, where they're going to go? Number 2, number 3, number 4? So then if you're Ohio State, shoot, you're kind of like, all right, whatever, we lost that game, but now we get to be in that 5 spot. I think that's where they drop because they're already the 2nd best team in the country. You end up in that 5 spot. We'll show it a little bit later. You saw it at the beginning of the show, but if you end up in that 5 spot, you get BYU as the number 12 seed in that first round, and then you get to go on to the second round and take on maybe Boise State, an easier opponent, so who already has that first round bye as the 4th seed.
Nobody's giving Indiana a chance this weekend. Do you?
I do, yes, I do. And I think it's really just the fact that they're coached as well as they are. And I really think that their quarterback can make the plays necessary to win the football game. I think Cignetti really understands like how to motivate his football team, prepare his football team. Very few self-inflicted wounds on this football team, and that's the key. The biggest question mark is just, can he keep his team focused on the task at hand without getting their emotions out of control in the situation? That's really what happens in these big games. When it is a big-time matchup, that is the biggest question for teams like this.
So you don't think that they should rest their starting quarterback in this game?
Oh, now, this was absolutely ridiculous because listen, Joey's awesome. He's a phenomenal football player, all that. Now, that take, I can't agree with. That's what we call a bad take in the industry. All right, but, but it's the truth, man. I mean, this is the most important game in your program's history. Florida State, hey, you lost your quarterback in a game that was already kind of in hand and won. You probably could have won it with your third-string quarterback in that situation. This is one of those games where you really need to prove yourself, and you need to have a great showing with your star quarterback. If they roll out their backup because they're sitting Curtis Rourke, yes, he's played well, but that is leaving the door open for, I think, something to really go awry for them.
Real quick, YouTube chat. Guys, you're going to like hearing this. There's a guy in here called Resido. He came in, he said, I love this group of people. I was here at the beginning of the season for the fantasy draft. So shout out to him. He's been with us before the season even started. He said he watched our
That's
show.
probably Brian, our producer, in there. He's just,
No,
we
he's
really
not cool enough
Shout
to
out
have a
to you,
name.
man.
Yeah,
Thanks for watching the show.
Yeah,
Everybody that's watching, subscribe, like the video, and let's talk more football. So.
Yeah, so we got everyone saying now, this is a team you don't want to see come this time of year. Vanderbilt is one of those teams. Tennessee has a 78% chance to win this game, guys. Ooh. Maddie, you agree with this percentage, or should it be a little bit lower?
I like the music here that we got going right now. I like this percentage, and Tennessee is going to take care of business against Vanderbilt, all right? Because we are the best team in the state of Tennessee, so don't even worry about it. All right, we're going to take care of the Commodores.
Sharks are in the water, Scoob, and they are just waiting for the chum right now. BYU and Arizona State. This is a really tight one and a toss-up that could decide the Big 12 title race. Who wins this game in your mind, Scoob?
I'm going to go ahead and take BYU. They already burnt me once when I picked them to beat Kansas last week, but I think BYU bounces back after a tough loss. This is the chip. This is the motivation that you need to come out and play strong.
The fighting Dillahams, man. They're going to get it done. I'm telling you. Yeah, that's right. Whatever that trident thing is that they do.
There's another one, too. Ole Miss and Florida. How about Florida kind of wrecking LSU season, and they might do the same to Ole Miss?
This is a sneaky football game, man, and I'm sorry to all the fans out there that hate the SEC talk, but, this is a real tough matchup. Florida is playing really good football. Yeah. DJ Lagway is doing it his way. Lagway. So they're playing really good football right now, but, the key is, can they protect him consistently against one of the best defensive lines in the country?
Ooh, I love this matchup. Lagway, hopefully that hamstring is getting healthier. He looked like he was moving quite well, but for Ole Miss, if you get this win, this is another statement win where the committee is going to look at it like, that's a good win. That's a good football team that you just beat.
And if Florida wins this football game, that's a great win for who? For Miami.
Right.
Because they're a team that they're looking for good victories. And if Florida upsets Ole Miss, that is another one that they can say we had a good win in early September or the 1st of September.
There's some more talk as well about being hurt if you're playing in your conference title game.
Yeah.
Namely, from Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. And apparently Lane had talked to some sources, and he was like, I don't know if it's really worth it playing in this SEC title game.
I've talked to other coaches, so I'll just kind of give you the feeling from some other coaches that, they don't want to be in it. The risk to get a bye, the reward to get a bye versus the risk to get knocked out completely. I mean, that's a really big risk, just to get a bye. So I think it's ended up being a very unique situation of all, postseason sports, the way that system's set up there, and how you could go to that and get knocked out, and if you don't go, you're in.
All right, so Heather, we are now joined by Heather Dinich for what is the 3rd straight week now. HC, really appreciate you hopping on Rankings Reaction with us. Does he have a point? Does Lane have a point with what he said there?
He has a point, and it's something that coaches have been talking about since the summer.
Oh, I wish you would have said that he was just talking to in a mirror when he had this conversation with another SEC coach, but it's all right.
Well, I talked to Kirby Smart about it at SEC Media Days, and Kirby said to me that he's been an SEC enthusiast for 25 years, and winning the SEC title to him is as valuable as winning the national championship and just as difficult, and it just got more difficult.
Right.
I also talked to James Franklin and Ryan Day at Big Ten Media Days. This is how far back this conversation goes. Coaches have been thinking about it, and they said it's a fair question. It's a conversation and something worth talking about. But the reality is, let me tell you something, Lane Kiffin. Don't lose at home to Kentucky.
That's right.
Alabama,
that's my point.
don't lose to Vanderbilt. No, we're not having this conversation.
Let's go, Heather.
I don't have a ton of sympathy. We had this conversation before the show. The committee could easily say, we're not dinging you for losing the SEC championship game. We're dinging you for losing to Kentucky and the other who was the other team? Sorry.
Yeah, Ole Miss.
Ole Miss, sorry.
But the other thing too, guys, is the selection committee watches who you are playing in the conference championship game, where they're ranked, and how the game unfolds. So we're all kind of assuming, based on Lane's comments, that the SEC runner-up is going to be out. It's not necessarily the case.
Yeah.
And this goes back to our 3-loss conversation 2 weeks ago, right? Can a 3-loss SEC team get in? Well, if you have Georgia, losing in the SEC championship game, or insert your team here, does the committee really leave out the second best team in the SEC because they lost that game?
I say no. Unless it's like an absolute bloodbath and it's like a terrible showing by that team. Other than that, I say no, they don't. And I think Lane is just trying to maybe express what other coaches don't want to be the precedent of this new age that we're in, right? They don't want to be the first one to say, hey, we were the ones that came in second place in the SEC or the Big Ten. But I'm with you guys. Like, Lane did this earlier in the year when he was talking about how our schedule was too easy and preparing for the SEC schedule. Now he's going this same route. But, the excuses, I don't care, man.
I thought
real
we had
simple.
an SEC bias here. What happened
We
to the
totally
SEC bias?
do. Except, unfortunately for me, mine's orange and white and checkerboard. All right? So, it's just, no doubt. And they're out, so you're coming with us. But that is the biggest thing, right? It's just you got to take care of business, and they'll have many opportunities, I think, to right that.
Man, to think if Alabama or Georgia is going to end up there and that they lose that SEC title game, we're really going to leave them out? It's tough to say, and I see what Lane Kiffin is saying, but I'm with you. You can't leave those teams out, and now it's going to really come into question about, does Penn State deserve to be there? Does Indiana, even though you may or may not lose to Ohio State, do you deserve to be there? And then if Texas gets to the SEC title game or not, or if what happens if Texas loses the SEC title game? They don't necessarily have a great win. So what happens there?
Well, the bottom line is no one knows, not even the selection committee, because we haven't done this yet. No one has seen the 12-team playoff unfold. And it's so hard to try to answer these questions in a vacuum without knowing what happens in the other conferences.
We heard the guys on
We just know Notre Dame is in if they keep winning.
Sure. We heard the guys on Linear Show kind of reference something from last year or try to apply it to this year based on last year's results. Mm-hmm. Can we do that? Like, is that something we can do, or should we just erase everything from last year and we're starting fresh this year?
The committee erases everything from last year. Let me say it that way. And the other thing about the committee that people should know is there are 6 new people in the room. I don't think people are giving enough credit to the fact there are new people in the room. Ward Manuel is a returning committee member, but he's the chair. Rich Clark is the executive director. He's new. This committee is not doing what I have seen them do in years past.
How so?
In years past, it aligned very closely with ESPN's strength of record metric.
Okay.
Georgia, and this is for the top 4 teams. Mm-hmm. If this was last year, Georgia would be in the top 4 based on the strength of record metric, which they're 2. And I want to explain that to people. That means teams would have an 11% chance of achieving the same record as Georgia against the same opponents. That's what that means. They're number 1 in strength of schedule. So this group is valuing losses and eye test. It is the only explanation for Penn State, which lost a close game to the number, 2 team, Ohio State lost
that
a close
dominating win
game
against USC.
A lot of eye testing going on.
And I love that you brought up
tough.
Their value in losses and eye tests. And earlier in the show, I was talking about BYU. Their loss got valued really high against Kansas, knocked all the way back, basically almost out of the college football playoff. A team like Kansas, who is so hot right now and can even take out Colorado, who everybody is so hot on. So what is your reaction to the committee making that decision with BYU, putting them behind an SMU team that they beat?
Well, yes, that head-to-head was interesting because that was one thing that I differentiated with in my projection was I had SMU ahead of BYU because of that. But I think it's also big picture statistically with BYU being an average team, period, that was undefeated. And then they had a loss to a 6-loss Kansas, while going back to the loss with Boise State by a field goal to the committee's number 1 team, right? So I think that had a lot to do with the difference.
Hard to believe it's already been 30 minutes.
Yeah, man.
We're out of time. We're out of time.
Every week.
We need more time.
Thank you for joining us again, Heather. Really appreciate it. For Matt, Skubie, our entire crew, I am Sam. Thank you so much for watching Rankings Reaction presented by Allstate. We'll see you Saturday.